Welcome to Essential Ingredients, powered by NextGen Purpose. EI serves up thoughtful conversations with industry leaders and pioneers who support a regenerative future for our food system. The stories shared by our guests are meant to spark curiosity and inspire informed global change. Good afternoon and welcome to Essential Ingredients. I'm your host, Justine Reichman. With me today is Robert Lee, CEO and co-founder of Rescuing Leftover Cuisine. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me. I'm glad that we were able to organize this. I know it's a busy time around the holidays, but thanks for joining me.
Of course, thanks for arranging this, and thank you so much for having the opportunity to kind of amplify our voice.
Yeah, it's great because I think so often there's a lot of these different kinds of organizations around, and we just don't get to talk about them enough or share your story and tell people what it is you're doing. So I'd love to kick it off with you just sharing what Rescuing Leftover Cuisine is.
Yeah, it's very self-explanatory in the name, but what we do is we bring excess food to those in need at home shelters, soup kitchens, and food pantries. Our mission is to redistribute excess food to people experiencing food insecurity. And we do that in various ways, but typically we engage rescuers, volunteers, much like you and me, and we just go out there and we rescue food from all kinds of food businesses, restaurants, catering companies, to even wholesalers and distributors. And so we've been doing this since 2013. And looking to continue to kind of grow and expand and really make food rescue the universal standard rather than the exception.
Wow, that's wonderful. What a great mission.
Thanks.
Rob, tell me, what inspired you to co-found this organization?
Yeah, we got started honestly very organically, but it also started with my own personal kind of background. I grew up in New York City, second child of two immigrants who basically struggled to kind of find footing here in the US. And I grew up thinking that food insecurity was normal. I thought that everyone was struggling to find food. And going to school, I realized that was definitely not the case when I saw people throwing out, bags of carrots and, apples and perfectly great food. And as I kind of, grew up and really, learned a lot about how much excess food there was, it always bothered me. And by the time I went to college at NYU, I came across this club that brought leftover dining hall food to homeless shelters. And that was when I really got super really impressed by what they were doing, but also just engrossed in the work of taking excess food to those in need, right? And it was just a club in the beginning. I kind of got super involved and I helped grow it throughout the 4 years of college. But afterwards, after kind of getting a job at JP Morgan, I realized that it was something that I wanted to continue to do after graduation. And so started Rescuing Leftover Cuisine in 2013 and kept on growing it, and ended up quitting my job at JP Morgan in 2014. So it's been about 9 years since then, which is insane to think about. But yeah, that's kind of the story in a nutshell.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you sharing that so much. And because there are other organizations, Habitat. Oh no, I'm trying to think of what the one is in New York City that I know about. And you can see it. Oh God, I can picture the trucks.
Oh, City Harvest, probably.
City Harvest. Thank you.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
also from New York City.
So, oh, awesome.
Born and raised. So
Perfect.
I can see these trucks. City Harvest
Yes.
was what I knew about growing up there.
Yeah, and it's insane. I think City Harvest was one of the very first food rescue organizations, or I think the first, and they did amazing work in kind of paving the way for food rescue to kind of become a thing. And what I realized while going to NYU was that City Harvest had a minimum pound requirement because of the kind of the model that they had, which was very reasonable and very intelligent, in that you don't want to kind of bring a truck into the city and get all these parking tickets and like pay for all this gas just to pick up something that was like less than a load for a truck. Basically we started to specifically kind of target that niche gap of the smaller amounts of food because of the 26,000 food establishments in New York City, the vast majority of them are not going to have, above 150 pounds or 100 pounds of food to donate every night, right? So, we specifically tried to create a model that didn't rely on trucks, that didn't rely on kind of this larger amount of food to make it worthwhile to transport.
Yeah, and I love that, but I also, what really I thought was interesting was when you were talking about the school cafeterias. And that's not
Absolutely.
something that City Harvest was targeting. That was not their niche. So can you just go into that a little bit more? Because I think that that's a unique market, and I don't know how many other people are touching on that. And I'm not quite sure just how large that market is, but I'd love to learn a little bit more about that if you would, just dig a little deeper into that for us.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think in general, a lot of cafeterias, both for corporate cafeterias as well as school cafeterias, are a huge untapped kind of area. Within our college, within NYU, we worked with dining halls to rescue the excess food, and it's insane how much excess food is just thrown away, right? And especially in these kind of establishments.
Mhm.
Um, with our NYU club, after we started Rescuing Leftover Cuisine, we actually kind of moved away from student cafeterias because there were a lot of really great groups, for example, the Food Recovery Network, that focused specifically on kind of advocacy and getting students together to rescue food from their dining halls, mostly within colleges. But overall, I think, just private schools, in general have become more and more of a kind of proponent for rescuing food and donating their excess food. And we still haven't seen much kind of from the public and as much, but there's a lot of excess food happening there. What's exciting is at the end of last year, like just a couple weeks ago, the Food Donation Improvement Act was just passed by Congress, which actually helps solidify and clarify some language for schools to donate excess food. And I think, that kind of momentum has really helped us really kind of continue to push the kind of, universal standard of having excess food be donated instead of thrown away.
Wow, that's a great a great movement forward. So that's great to hear. So, you were working at JP Morgan, you were inspired by your childhood, which I think is so often where we get these ideas and what sort of enables us to create our vision for the future. I know that I'm really inspired by my childhood, and it really, it sort of cultivated my value system and what I'm doing today. So I can see that in what you're doing as well, right?
Yeah, it's super important. I think that a lot of the kind of idealistic things, dreams that we've had since childhood, I think it gets harder and harder to kind of push for that as you grow older. But I think it's it just kind of that push and that belief and faith that kind of helps make it a reality, right?
Yeah, I would agree. And I hope that, that continues in my future and I can continue to hold on to that.
Absolutely. It's
So
tough.
it, it is, but it keeps me going every day.
Absolutely.
And I'm more
Absolutely.
motivated to do that than I am anything else.
100%.
So, you left JP Morgan, followed on this mission to build this company and this organization that's impact driven. And so I'm wondering what the shift from JP Morgan to grow this business. Can you talk a little bit about that? You're a first time entrepreneur, you're young, you're green, you're excited. Can you talk to us a little bit about what your journey was like?
Yeah, it was very um very winding. I think a lot of kind of starting your own organization or company is a lot of learning, right? And I think that I think at JP Morgan, I had the opportunity to learn a lot about all kinds of things, even just on a basic level, learning how JP Morgan was structured, kind of internally in terms of how they incentivize employees and how they kind of cultivate talent. And I tried to learn as much as possible before leaving JP Morgan, as well as kind of like the people aspect of it as well. And when I first started on the journey, I think it was just a lot of kind of working in the business, in that it was a lot of like creating pilots, proving out the model, getting the proof of concept, and kind of pushing the envelope more and more. And I found myself, physically rescuing food after working kind of a 9 to 5, like in an office type of setting, on growing more food donor partners and growing more nonprofit recipient partners and things like that. And I found myself kind of, being in the weeds too much, and learned a lot about kind of, trying to think about growth, and what the next steps are, and hiring your first employee, and figuring out all these different, structures and systems and processes that help grow the organization and grow the processes overall, so that it doesn't just get stuck in the same things over and over again.
Wow. So it was an important part of the journey,
Oh,
actually.
absolutely.
I would
Absolutely.
agree. I had a similar, I mean, not a similar experience, but I was working at PwC. This is
Mm,
20 years ago. And
awesome.
it was the process and the boundaries and the
Hmm.
structure that helped me in, my startups. It was learning that, understanding that, and then using
Hmm.
that um, in my startups, being able
Yeah,
to implement and be able to understand. And without getting that skill set and without getting that education, it would have been a little bit more difficult for me. That was my
absolutely.
experience. So
Absolutely.
I'm
I would
really
100% agree.
grateful for having had that opportunity.
Same.
I always think about it when I see these entrepreneurs and they're coming right out of graduate school, they're coming right out of college, and I'm like, and I'm amazed and I'm in awe, and I think it's amazing. There's no judgment there, but I I don't know that I would have been able to do that. I don't know that I would have
Yeah.
been able to think it through that cleverly. I don't know that I would have had the skill set to do it. Um, and
It's
yet,
interesting. I think there's kind of, many approaches, but I think that like um I think when I first started, and kind of early in the stages of RLC, I was a huge proponent of kind of, working at various companies and interning at various companies, because yeah, I during the 4 years of college, I interned at various large nonprofits, small for-profit companies, startups, as well as large, for-profit companies, and kind of got as much kind of, experience across different sectors, as well as sizes of companies. But what's interesting is that as I kind of worked on RLC longer and longer, I kind of see that like, the experience is less, it's not as important as having the mechanism to learn while you're still growing your organization, because learning from mentors, learning from, people's lived experiences, as well as just having people who can help, provide the right advice at the right time, I think is super key. And I think that sometimes you don't even have to kind of live through certain things to kind of have access to those things. So it's interesting. There's a lot of different methods, I think, to kind of
I
growing
totally
the,
agree. I
yeah.
totally, and I think it's interesting because we can have a great idea, and there's a lot of different ways to sketch out that idea.
Hmm.
Sometimes having that great idea also means that in order to execute it, you need to surround yourself with people
Oh,
that can
for
help
sure.
get you from point A to point C or D or E.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
Um, because you can be the visionary, but you may not have all those skills to get you where you need to go. And
exactly.
talking to those mentors and bringing them into the fold and understanding their processes and what worked and what didn't work. So cultivating that community is so important to hear, their experiences. So I couldn't
100%.
agree more. I think it's, having all those experiences, the access to the people, the, the information, and being open to it, like you said, is really key. Sometimes
Yeah.
we know everything when we're young. When we're old, it doesn't matter. Sometimes we just think we have all the answers. But I think the greatest gift I ever gave myself was letting myself know that people know more than me in
Yeah,
many
yeah,
areas.
truly. And it's also about like just, not repeating mistakes that, others have already made, right? And trying to kind of, make newer mistakes, right? Or just trying to kind of learn from as many people as possible.
But the only way to do that is to be open to listening.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so tell me so you built this, where are you currently right now with, oh, I heard you call it ROC.
Yeah, RLC. It's just for short.
Right. Yeah, I like that. Okay. So where are you guys right now, and what's new and what's on the horizon for you guys?
Yeah, it's a very exciting time. I think, over the past year in 2022, we've done a lot of kind of yeah, consolidation and alignment within our organization. We grew fairly quickly. In 2021, we rescued about 1.2 million pounds of food that year alone. And then last year, we're still finalizing the count, but we're at 2.9 million pounds of food. So we've nearly tripled, and we're looking to kind of continue that momentum and that rapid kind of growth. But there's a lot of work that needs to kind of be done in terms of continuing to expand and grow and work with new food donor partners. There's a lot of attention kind of being placed on kind of excess food and wasted food as a whole, which is incredible, and needs to happen, especially as things continue to kind of be highlighted around the environmental impacts of wasted food. There's just so many different components, and I think that for RLC, we're kind of year one of our kind of 3-year plan, if you will. And our plan is to try and get to 6 million pounds of food per year, and we're almost halfway there already. And so our plans are to continue to grow and grow as much as possible. But really the end goal, as I kind of mentioned before, is to make food rescue the universal standard, to make it so widespread that we reach a tipping point where food businesses have either no choice culturally or just socially or even legally to kind of donate their food, right? And I think as the movement continues and as more food businesses lead by action and by actually donating their excess food, it's going to be a culturally acceptable, thing to, like, I think it would be culturally unacceptable to throw away food, right? And I think at some point there will be this massive push across all food establishments to donate and to publicly say that they're donating their excess food instead of throwing it out. So that's kind of how we see things being situated at the current moment.
Wow. Okay. So going forward, is there anything that you're looking for to help grow your organization?
Yeah, I think there's so many things people can do, right? I think even at home, people can, be conscious of their excess food and their wasted food. And, truly for us, it's our dollars, right? Like, we're paying for these grocery items, and then if we throw it out, that's our dollars we could have used on something else, right? So that's the first thing I always talk about, which is like there's a lot of tips that even I've implemented, just because there's always ways to improve. But for instance, I saw a notable kind of improvement by just not grocery shopping when I'm hungry. Just, like, oh yeah, I can definitely eat all this, and then just taking all this amount of food home. But I think there are other ways too. I think to kind of continue to make it more at the forefront, I think it's important for people to ask their favorite restaurant or their place of place where they get food, what they do with their excess food, and
Great idea.
and kind of make it known that the values of their customers should align with their business, right? And more and more that we will use our dollar votes to support businesses that actually donate instead of throw out their excess, right? So I think there are a lot of kind of those kind of lifestyle changes and things that could do to help. But obviously, to support specifically RLC, you can always donate, you can always volunteer. We have a calendar of events where you can sign up online. There's a bunch of different opportunities that are available by different times of day, by different areas of the of your location. We're in 9 different cities right now, so you can feel free to just check us out, rescuingleftovercuisine.org, and there's a calendar there. And at the very least, you can always follow us on social media and just check us out and follow our story.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a great
Thank you so much for
conversation.
having me.
I learned so much and it was good to chat. I always love meeting fellow New Yorker too. So,
Yes, indeed.
but we'll continue to follow along. We'll ask everybody to follow along too. We'll throw it in the show notes, and we hope to see you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
To learn more about these episodes and access show notes, go to nextgenpurpose.com and choose podcast. If you like this episode, head to Apple Podcasts or your favorite platform to subscribe and leave us a review. Visit the Next Gen Purpose YouTube channel to subscribe to our EI videocast and give this episode a like while you're there. Follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Next Gen Purpose, and connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram at Justine_Reichman. Thanks for joining us.